But what I want to do is tell you about a Tuesday. It was 2:15 in the afternoon in the Chanakapuri police station. And I was sweating bullets for a couple of reasons. First of all, September in the subcontinent of India is still like climbing into a microwave. It is just hot. But not only that, there were 10 pairs of eyes, sullen eyes, just boring in on me. And one more reason. I had invited 1,000 people to what was supposed to be this huge blowout party, including a whole French elementary school. And it was supposed to be incredible. And I had even promised elephant and camel rides. And now my dream was fading by the moment. Well, maybe, so I don't confuse you, I better back up a little bit. I woke up one day and found myself the pastor of the International Church in India. Not Indiana, India. 1.3 billion people, 3 times the size of the United States in 1/3 of the land space, with 10 times the history of a land. Fascinating place. And we were living in the capital city, New Delhi. And that is a city of 32 million people. Now, for perspective, there are only 28 million people in the entire nation of Australia. And this was 32 million packed into a city. And it's the most crowded, stinkiest, hottest, most constipated city I ever have loved. An incredible place. It is just alive. And I got to be the pastor of the international church there. And you might be going, so what's an international church? Well, it's a church for people, not so much for natives, for people who live there, grown up there. It's for people who've come from all over the world to work there and practice their lives there. So, for example, diplomats. See, Delhi has become this amazing crossroads city of the world. And so it was full of diplomats from all of these countries. And then there are people who work for major multinational companies like Boeing and Walmart and Starbucks and Shell Oil. They live there. And there are also those who work for what are called NGOs, non-governmental organizations like World Bank or the World Institute of Health or International Justice Mission or the Southern Baptists. All of these people from all over the world have relocated, at least for a time, in this amazing city. And for those interested in faith or for those who want to practice their faith, there is the opportunity for an international church, and it is so much fun. Before the pandemic, we had people from 40 different ethnicities and 40 different Christian traditions. Can you imagine what our potlucks were like? They were just astounding. I loved all of that. But let's go back to that Tuesday. I had done all of the work for this party that was to be the end all of parties. It was like the fall welcome back to Delhi. We even gave it the name Hello Delhi. And I had it all figured out. So we had the big giant ball, you know, the one that you climb into and then all of your friends run around and you get sick inside of it. We had one of those, check. We had the native dance and drum corps, they were there. We had carnival rides. We had French pastries. Oh my goodness. We even had the Nigerian brothers. They were going to bring it on home in the evening with an End It All concert with their matching outfits. The whole thing was going to be just great. Oh, and a camel and an elephant. Check, check, check. I had it down. The Sunday before the Saturday when we were going to have the party, my good friend, Sister Nurmalini, who heads up the Carmel Convent School where our church met there, she'd become a very good friend, and she said, "Oh, Reverend." I like how she called me Reverend. Nobody calls me Reverend anymore. "Oh, Reverend, did you get a permit?" "Oh, what?" "Well, you do know that you must have a permit in order to have giant beasts on the streets in the embassy area, because giant beasts are not allowed. You do have a permit, right?" I didn't know. I said, "Sister, in Delhi, how long will it take me to get a permit? Is a week enough?" All she did is say, "I will pray for you." So Monday, I am running around like Mario, going from bureaucratic level to bureaucratic level, taking my piece of paper because I need all of these approvals. And every person, they want to hear the whole story of why. And they want to look at my visa to make sure that it's not a counterfeit. And they ask me my father's name. Why that matters, I have no idea. And everybody wants to have tea. Can I just say, bathrooms are very, very hard to find in governmental buildings in New Delhi. All that tea. But finally, check, check, check. I got all of those signed off, but I yet had to go to the police station in Chanakapuri. So Tuesday morning, I made my appointment. It's for 1:30. I show up. They ignore me like I am a bad mango, and I'm just sitting there. I doze off, but I had these images of angry French parents who were upset at me because their children came to the party and didn't get an elephant or a camel ride. Finally, the deputy came out, and he escorted me into the captain's large office. And here's the captain behind the giant desk, and there is a whole semicircle of like 9 or 10 chairs in front of him. And the deputy pointed me to one seat, and I sat there and sat there and sat there. He didn't say a word. Mercifully, eventually 9 other guys came in, and they sat around the desk. And I'm thinking, oh, these guys are all his lackeys, his underlings. But I had to be impressed because these guys all had razor creased pants and perfectly set up uniforms and their medals, and they had great hair and mustaches and beard, and I don't have anything in that area. And I just sat there, and nobody said a word. Finally, 2 really skinny kids, young men, came in with trays of tea and biscuits. And these guys smoked away, drank their tea, ate biscuits. No one says a word to me. And meanwhile, what's going through my mind? I got to get a camel and an elephant for the party on Saturday, and I've got to get this signed off, and no one's saying anything to me. And I'm thinking of angry Frenchmen and sad French children. Finally, one of the group, and he was the only one not in a uniform, he turns to me and he said, "Sir, may I ask why you are here?" And I said, "Well, I am the Pujere, I'm the priest, I'm the pastor of the international church that meets at the Carmel Convent School." And he said, "Oh, isn't that where Sister Nurmalini is the chief sister?" And I said, "Well, yes, it is." He smiled, I smiled, because we all knew that Sister Nurmalini has this way of getting people to do things that we would normally never agree to doing. And so at least we had a little bit of common ground there. But then he said, "You've told me who you are. You haven't told me why you're here." I told him my sad story about still needing a camel and an elephant for Saturday for the big party. And if I didn't get it, there would be all of these upset people and these sad children, especially the French. And he said, "Oh, the French are going to be coming? Ooh, that is serious." Then he said one other thing, and it completely caught me off guard. He said, "Are you a holy man?" Now, that's not something that you go, "Yes, I am." No, yeah, you want to be humble about that. So I said, yes, I am. And he said, "Would you pray for me?" Now, you got the scene, right? All of these people who weren't even talking to me. Everybody with sullen eyes wondering what I'm doing in this room with them during their coffee break as they're having their tea and their cigarettes and their biscuits. "Would you pray for me?" And I said, "Sir," and I could tell that his outfit was a little bit more professional, and his voice had, well, it was one of those voices that sounds like the person in charge, and all of a sudden it sunk in. Oh my goodness. He's the big guy. He's the boss of the captain. And he's the one who said, "Would you pray for me?" "Sir, I would be honored to pray for you. Can you tell me why?" And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out his phone. And he began to look for pictures. And finally he got to one, and he handed it to the guy next to him, who handed it to the next guy, who handed it to me. And he said, "That is a picture of my wife. She recently died of a slow cancer. She is no more." And I could see that he was just gutted inside. I said, "Sir, I would be honored to pray for you." But he said, and then he flipped to another picture. He said, "And this is my son. My son was at university. He was a champion badminton player. And he came home to comfort me upon his mother's death. And after a party, he had an accident with his scooter. And he has been injured, and his legs no longer work." So we stopped and we prayed. And I got to tell you, in that moment, it was like time stopped. And that captain's office became kind of a small cathedral where, instead of sweet-smelling incense, the incense was cigarette smoke. But God was there, and you could sense it. So I prayed. And I finished my prayer, and he just sat there for a moment. And then he said, "Could I ask you for one more thing?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "If I call my son, would you pray with my son over the phone?" I did. And after I'm done, I'm thinking, you know what? This would never happen back in my home country. I didn't say that out loud. I was just thinking of it. I'm going, experiences like this just don't happen here. And it is true that while we were in India during those years, it did seem like day after day after day, God showed up. And I had a friend who said, "What is easy in America is hard in India. And what is hard in America is easy in India." Do you get what he was saying? That yes, we've got wealth and we've got opportunities and we have all of these things that seem to be working, but there is another sense where the Spirit of God and openness to talk about spiritual things and the presence of God in lives, it seems to happen just more frequently when we're in India. And that's one of the reasons why, if you've been one of my students, I've railed at you to go get your passports. Good grief, get a passport. And you're going to hear an interview with one of my students in just a little bit, because I say to my students, go someplace where God will surprise you. Not so much because they need you, but because you might need them. And that's why I say, in some ways, India saved my life. I experienced the presence of God more frequently in deeper ways there than any time prior in my life. But you know what? I have been rethinking that. There is a writer, his name is Luis Alberto Urrea, and he is an amazing writer. He's shortlisted for a Pulitzer Prize. And I was listening to him the other day, and he said, what we don't understand is that for those who are people of faith, every day is a sort of birthday, where God is always showing up with birthday presents, but we're so busy, we're so distracted, we've got papers to write, we've got friends to keep up with, we've got Facebook feeds or Twitter feeds, and we don't even realize that God is always showing up with presents in our lives. And I needed to hear that. I needed to be reminded that every day is a birthday, because God is this amazing gift giver. So, what happened on the big day? Well, before I get that, let me tell you how my meeting ended. It was so incredible. As we're sitting there, nobody knows what to say after my prayer. But just then, the deputy comes in, and he says to the captain, "Oh, sir, the prime minister is going to be coming by the station in just a few minutes. I think we should all be standing out alongside the street to wave at him." And in a moment, the entire room just erupts. Everybody stands up and heads towards the door. And I stood up too, and I said, "Oh, but sir, how about my elephant and my camel?" And he did this fun Indian thing that Indian men of power do. Why? I don't know. And then he reached for a pen, signed my form. I got my camel and my elephant. So how was the party? No one was disappointed. And the French children, I'm sure, went to sleep that night with smiles on their faces. But here's my point for you. God is the gift-giving God. And when our hearts are open and we slow down long enough, God pries us open and he surprises us with his presence. Sometimes it happens more frequently or more often when you do get on that airplane and you go to someplace else and all of your plans kind of fall apart. And God shows up. So, Sophia, come on up. Let's chat for just a moment. Thank you for the chairs. I didn't give you more notice. I'm sorry about that. So, Sophia, you need to know something a little bit. You heard from Sophia on Wednesday, right? Just say yes. Yes. Okay. You heard from Sophia on Wednesday, and Sophia had to have, or was fortunate to have, classes with me a couple different times. And what were you going to say?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I actually just want to know if calling you Reverend would have gotten me better grades.
Nothing would have gotten you better grades. You had perfect grades already. There we go. There we go.
Good save.
No, Sophia, it was just a delight, and is a delight, to know her and to have her in my classes. She has that sly sense of humor, but I know that she is always paying attention. And so tell us a little bit where you went. Just remind them just for a moment.
Well, if any of you forgot, on Wednesday, he actually informed me you were all asleep on Wednesday, so that was good to know. I'll be keeping you on my list. But on Wednesday, I told you I went to Mumbai, India.
Was that a good experience for you?
It was an amazing experience for me.
Why?
It was very much like what you said. God shows up in ways you can't even expect him to. And it just changed my perspective on a lot of things.
Did you go expecting to do all of these things?
I went expecting to have a sense of doing things. I don't think I knew what we'd be doing, but I went expecting to do, yes.
Walk us through where God specifically showed up or surprised you in your life.
For the record, I was supposed to be interviewing him. No, I think it was a good reminder of it's not about us. Like, it's not about what we think we're going to accomplish. It's not about what we think we're going to be doing. It's about how can we let God surprise us. And so for me, part of that was once I felt like I'm not equipped for this, I don't know why I'm here, that's when God started putting people in my path to pray for or to talk to or to engage with, just to kind of build a connection, but then still to be reminded, like, I'm going to leave, and if these seeds have been planted, they've been planted, but that's because of him, not me.
Okay. You're right. I did kind of take over the interview, and I'm sorry about that.
Just let me
Go
know
ahead.
when
What
you're
questions do you have for me?
All right. I'll hit you with the top two because I know y'all
Okay.
got classes. I'd say when you flip open a Bible, which I'm sure you've done once or twice, I think what passage do you look at and think, because of that, I'm going to go? We've heard about like kind of the Great Commission and Paul's journey and all sorts of different things. Just what scripturally inspires you to serve?
That is a great question, Sophia. I think for me, let's go all the way back to chapter 12 of the Bible, of the book of Genesis, because that's where we see the personality of God, I think, show up for the first time. And God says to Abraham, I'm going to bless you that you would be a blessing to the nations. And even back at the very start of the Bible, you see God's heart to bless the nations of the earth. And so that just drives so much of how I think about my calling to follow Christ in the world.
I love that. For me, it was in our weakness, like that's where Christ shows up. For me, that passage definitely was a good, it's where we're not strong that Christ can fill in. And then I would say you have about 200, 300 college students with a variety of different experiences and stories and identities and just journeys in this room. And so they all have this opportunity. What do you want them to know about serving or hear? Or what would have helped you to hear?
Sure. I think when I look back over my life, I think that I came up with wonderful excuses why I couldn't do it years earlier. And they usually revolved around money. That, I didn't have enough money, or I didn't know how I was going to raise the money, or I wouldn't have the chance to work through the summer because of university or grad school costs. And I look back and I think I missed out on wonderful opportunities that would have shaped me much earlier in my life. The problem is that when you put off going and doing something out of the box, it gets harder and harder because there are family expectations, or you've got to pay your car payment, or you've got to pay back school loans. And the longer you kind of are in that mindset, the more you come up with reasons why it's just too hard now, I'm going to go some other time. And I'm saying, no, do it when you're younger, when God can easily turn you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as much as any of your lectures ever did.
Oh, you're so funny.
I paid him to say that. All right, so I'll let this be the last one.
Okay.
So being in a different culture is a completely different experience. Fully engaging, being completely immersed. I know obviously that was a big shock to me, going from San Francisco to India, but there's like something so beautiful and so awe-striking. Well, guess I don't know the rest of the question. Something about just engaging in those different cultures. What is that sense of this is different? What does that feel like? What is that experience like to you? And how does it kind of point back towards God?
That's a big question. Let me see if I can take a swing at it. I think for me, let me frame it this way. I had a chance to watch a lot of people, since I was dealing with internationals all the time, people from all over the world. I watched some people get immersed into those new cultures, and for the first 6 months they love it because it's like they're still on travel time. for about 6 months, and then boom, they hit the wall. And then I would watch people drop kind of into a depression because now they're disoriented. And they are missing out on family birthdays and the food from home and everything that they like. And so I watched missionaries, I watched excellent people begin to grind down because that disorientation just was too hard for them, or they felt it was too hard for them. But I watched other people flourish, and what seems to be the traits of those who flourished, two things. Number one, they believed that God was in the disorientation. And number two, they chose to be curious. All through their time in that new land, that even in their prayers they said, God, don't let me get confounded here. Keep me curious. And when I see that in people, oh my gosh, they are so fun to hang around with and to walk alongside. Okay. That make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing today, and just I think it's been a good reminder just all week that there's so much beauty that we can go and see, even if that's around here with local or across the world
Absolutely.
with global. Yeah. So
I love what Helen Keller said. She said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Isn't that great? Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And you know what? I don't want to waste my life. Mm-hmm. I don't want to become one of these old guys who talks about the old days and lacks the joy of Christ in their life.